name is Valia Leeton, and this is my final Coetail project for Course 5. When deciding on a topic for this course, I reflected on my previous year's work in science and decided I needed to revamp my teaching for an annual science fair competition at my school that culminates with the participation of students from many parts of the Middle East. I currently teach 8th grade science at the American International School in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And Azar's 6 winning teams of 8th grade students are now currently participating in the virtual part of the Nesa Near East South Asia Science Fair. As I worked on my final project for my Coetail class, I realized how much I've learned in my 27 years of teaching in order to complete this course. When going through my education courses in college, I remember being trained on the ditto machine and mimeograph, using film strip projectors, and slides to impart information to students. At the time, this tech would hold a student's interest, particularly if you were the one to turn the film strip knob. But now I have to pique and keep the curiosity of my 8th grade students in order to motivate them in selecting a viable science topic they enjoy, experiment and test variables, and successfully communicate those findings to an audience. My goals for my Coetail project included developing a clear-cut sequence of events and then employ them in 20-minute segments. Since I needed to teach the regular chemistry curriculum at the same time as these projects, I decided on using 20 minutes as the standard time I could take from each period's lesson. In order to prepare for this unit, I started the year with basic experiments to get students questioning how experiments were done, practice hypothesizing, demonstrate how to extend their gained knowledge so they had reference when actual science fair competition would come around in January. Students also participated in surveys that helped them find ideas that matched their interests. Selecting partners was the easy part for them. However, from a survey from last year's science class and my own teaching experience, we limited partners to ones in the class. Current surveys wanted me to select. From class discussions, we decided that students would research 3 ideas they had for their projects. This would allow them time to see if their idea was viable, if their team could work together, and find shared interests. Moodle was an obstacle for some of us. All parts of the project were broken down into sections and due dates assigned to students. The programmed part of Moodle included a gaming component for students to finish assignments and earn badges. I used mentor students to assist students as they built their Moodle pages for their projects. Some students suggested making informative slideshows for next year to explain those directions. This is already in the works. Using the Coetail guidelines for tech projects, I worked with students on designing their final slideshows. The hardest part was having students cite their source for pictures gleaned from the internet and not using any words on their slides. We did make exceptions with the title page, the citation page, and their abstracts. Students had never written an abstract before, and since it was maxed out at 150 words, I wanted parents to see these, but not have students read it aloud to the audience. As my students worked through their projects, I wanted to strengthen my students' understanding of the scientific method via the next generation science standards which our school has adopted. My goals were to have students design experiments that would have real-world implications. Collecting data and interpreting outcomes, organizing, presenting the data were goals of this unit. We furthered our cross-cutting NGSS skills by using math, using models, and then communicating this information to an audience. Students and I learned through this science fair what was beneficial and what wasn't. Keeping track of the data collected through conversations, checklists, and surveys has been filed away in my Google Drive for next year. When analyzing data on soft skills with my students, a lot was put immediately to use in their humanities classes. Their culminating project requires most of the same cross-cutting skills that were needed for science. I stressed the importance of partner selection, timelines, and accountability with the students, and worked with the humanities teachers to share struggles and successes from my project. When looking at differentiation strategies used during the science fair project, I looked at the various learning styles of the students and their maturity. Even though students were allowed the opportunity to pick their partners for their projects, they had to articulate those reasons to me. And in order to avoid conflicts during the project from home, students were asked to discuss their proposed project ideas, including time commitments during and after school, materials to be purchased, and the acceptance of their partners. Students were given options based on mutual agreements made with me on how committed they need to be to the gaming component of the Nesa website. From past experience, I know some students thrived with this incentive while others did not. I had all students work on collecting the first batch to encourage them to try it. Subsequent rounds were entirely up to the whim of the teams. I employed the same strategy when working with real scientists. All students were required to ask relevant questions from one of the dead scientists portrayed by real scientists back in the States. Communication with someone around the world proved to be tricky. Other differentiation strategies were based on individual conversations, the multiple surveys, choice of assignments, individual and team feedback, utilizing peer helpers, designing mini lessons for science concepts, and verbalizing high expectations, and finally employing Paul Anderson's questioning techniques. I viewed it as January workshop. Looking back over the technology we used, I can see a broadening of the horizons for next year that is needed. My students and I were extremely comfortable in the use of everything Google, from documents to slides, surveys to sheets, using Teacher Dashboard, then moving on to YouTube, and of course the necessary Moodle that was required. The actual science fair event was presented to the middle school and elementary school students in March, as well as teachers and parents and administration. The old, tired and true trifold boards were used in a lecture setting with a technology focus which proved to be successful. Each of the components I improved or developed for this project I'll be able to share with the Nesa Virtual Science Fair annual team meeting in fall of next year. I am very happy with the outcome of my project. I feel my goals are met, and I know that I have room to grow, but I also know that I am constantly looking for ideas to improve my teaching and to improve my students' learning. I will listen to my students and be using their suggestions for next year. I know the students will always be more technologically advanced than me, but that's not an issue. I am comfortable with their ease for solving tech issues for others and for me, while content and guidance are my strengths. I know for the future I want to encourage their branching out with their creativity and technology. I want them to know there's more out there than Google Slides for presentations of their wonderful projects, and I know for sure that I will continue to improve the bank of exemplars for students. Students readily request these and use these for ideas and guidelines. I am glad that I had this opportunity to put this unit together in a video format to further my learning. So, all in all, life is good for teaching today.